Hi, and welcome to a very special spooky Halloween episode on the cults of Washington State. People on YouTube voted in my community tab for a spooky topic for me to do this October, and this one won with almost 40% voting for cults of Washington. This is probably going to be a bit of a low effort episode. Editing is probably going to be somewhat minimal. I'm not going to do a super deep dive into any of the groups, more just say they operate or they did operate in the state, and maybe like a highlight reel of their activities or infamy. Also, because sometimes groups can be very litigious, I will say I'm not directly saying any of these groups are cults. I am saying they operate or they did operate in Washington State, and I've seen someone else say they are a cult or cult-like. I'll try to mention where people have said they are a cult when I'm mentioning them and bringing them up. Just imagine every single time I'm saying cults, I'm also putting air quotes around it, alright? We all agree? Okay, cool. So first off, I'll go over the cults, putting that in air quotes, of the state that are international, or exist not only in Washington, but also maintain a very large presence outside of it. Scientology, debatably the most famous cult, or group accused of being a cult, is in Washington. You can find a Rolling Stone article talking about its ex-members describing it as a cult. It operates in the state with a church located in the Queen Anne neighborhood of Seattle. The church in Seattle was originally founded in 1956, but in 2010 it was renovated to make room for the growing size of the church. Another infamous group is the Falun Gong, a Chinese New Wave religious group that has been accused of indoctrinating its members into a personality cult, claiming its members' organs are so spiritually perfect the CCP is targeting them to steal their organs, and promoting an idea where every race gets its own heaven. There are 2 J.J. McCullough videos about the group if you are interested to know more. But Falun Gong does operate in the state, seemingly with offices or at least representatives in Seattle, Bellevue, and Olympia. In late September of this year, a conference was actually held in Seattle. Not sure how big it was, but they had at least 19 speakers. Another Asian-based group is the Unification Church, or the Korean church that was famous for its mass weddings and recently came under fire for its relations with former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. You can read an article from it from Insider that talks more about its ties to Abe and its history. The church and its followers, known as Moonies, do operate in Seattle, and they have a church in Seattle known as the Seattle Family Church. There is a group known as the House of Prayer that operates throughout the U.S. They have been accused, and I'm getting this from the Tacoma News Tribune and Task and Purpose, will target members of the military or veterans and leech funds from them. They have/had churches near Fort Lewis McChord Base, probably the biggest, or at least one of the biggest military bases in the state. In 2022, the FBI raided their Tacoma church along with several different churches across the country. The True Buddha School is another controversial group that operates throughout the world, but notably is actually based out of Washington, with its headquarters located in Redmond, Washington. The website View on Buddhism links to the school's master, Lu Shengyang's Wikipedia page, which has several different controversies, along with a dead link to a website that seems to talk about Buddhist cults. View on Buddhism says, quote, Shen Yun's extravagant claims of authority as a Buddhist master are questionable at best. He even gives Kalchaktric intonations based on who knows. None of his followers so far have been able to explain to me how he became a qualified Chaktric master. They merely restate his unfounded claim, unquote. And this all seems to point to the fact that some people interpret him as a charlatan or an illegitimate authority on Buddhism. Finally, the Chinese government actually has listed the True Buddha School as a hetero-orthodox teaching, which is the label the Chinese government puts on groups like the Falun Gong or other underground hostile religious groups, kind of seemingly trying to imply that they're like a cult of some sort. And the Seattle Weekly publishing an article in 2006 talking about how Lu had allegedly coerced a female follower into having sex with him for years, although Lu was found acquitted in a legal case later. One interesting group I found while looking is the United Pentecostal Church International, or UPCI. The UPCI is a pretty massive denomination with a lot of different churches, and it seems to be somewhat decentralized. There's an article on Newsweek talking about an ex-member describing how it had a very strict social code, had to give up 1/4 of her income to the church, and dominated her life. However, the really interesting thing about the UPCI and Washington is an infamous event that occurred in Bellevue in 1995. That year, a member of the UPCI-affiliated church was taken by Rick Ross, who seems to be a famous anti-cult programmer and member of the Cult Awareness Network, to Ocean Shores and, according to the Seattle Times, was held captive for several days and berated. Eventually, the member sued Ross, which greatly weakened the network. So let's now start looking at some more local groups. First, we have the defunct Community Chapel and Bible Training Center. The church was founded in the late 60s in Burien, Washington, but became infamous in the mid-80s for, according to the Seattle Times, encouraging his followers to dance and kiss fellow church members for spiritual enlightenment. This eventually led to a lot of drama within the church as couples were broken apart, and many were driven to leave the group, while others killed themselves, and in one case, a woman killed her daughter because she felt demons controlled her. Eventually, the church would be dissolved, the pastor leaving, and a massive lawsuit taking place. Another ex-church is the Mars Hill Church, founded by pastor Mark Driscoll. The church originally grew massively in part to Driscoll's charismatic preaching style and hard stance against anything that goes against traditional gender norms. However, in 2013, his church began collapsing as it was exposed over the course of several months he had stolen and plagiarized from other pastors, bullied any who questioned him, had a strong cult of personality within the church, and had written some sexist stuff towards women in some internet forums. This all eventually led to Driscoll abandoning the church and it dissolving in 2015. The website Get Religion has an article that talks about how Driscoll, after leaving Seattle in 2016, would found another church in Scottsdale, Arizona, was threatening to sue any ex-members who spoke out against the church, and asked why the secular media hadn't covered it. So I guess it's still technically kind of active, although not in the state. While looking for cults in the state, I found the disturbing story of Wilfred Warren. Warren didn't really have a cult or even a religious organization around him, but he did force his 2 wives and 12 children into a very abusive and horrific living situation in Ellensburg, Washington, that the persecutors described as cult-like. People.com has several articles that talk about him and go into a lot of the details. A local cult that is still active is the Ramtha School of Enlightenment. The school is headed by a woman, J.Z. Knight, who claims that a 35,000-year-old spirit, Ramtha, has possessed her and is giving her special spiritual insight. She/P set up a base of operations in Yelm, Washington, where the group still operates today, preaching new wave religious beliefs, along with arguing that the world was going to end, so her/his followers needed to go into the PNW where they would be spared, which resulted in many leaving their families to be near Ramtha. Ramtha also encouraged his/her followers to buy very expensive things like horses for $250,000 from Ramtha, which resulted in Ramtha quickly becoming very rich. Allegedly, she/he also poisoned her followers by making them drink lye, and just generally say a lot of out-of-pocket statements, plenty of which you can find in the ABC News 2020 report from 1987 or a 2021 article from Seattle Met. A smaller local group is the Love Israel Family. Love Israel Family was founded in the 60s and came into the scene combining a combination of hippie love and Christianity. It grew in the Queen Anne neighborhood of Seattle, where communal living and marijuana were encouraged, while respect for its leader, Paul Erdmart, or as he would later change his name, Love Israel, was mandatory. In 1983, the group broke up for a variety of reasons, but an article from HistoryLink talks about the growing separation between its members led many to demand that Love Israel relinquish his control of the group. After legal infighting and most of its members deserting, Love Israel and his remaining followers moved north into Arlington, Washington, where they stayed for several more years until 2003, when they lost their land due to financial troubles. A small core of followers do still remain, although they are very much diminished since the death of Love Israel. A documentary, It Takes a Cult, also shows the experience of those who lived in the group if you want to know more. Finally, we have a small group known as The Body. The Body was originally from Alaska, but seems to have moved into Okanagan County, Washington in the late 2010s. Based on an article by Dominic Bonney and a video from Ciaran Warner, the group is kind of a combination of fundamentalist quasi-Christianity, with the leader of the group claiming he was sent to hell to fight the devil and then he won, which I don't think is in the Bible, and the Sovereign Citizens Movement. In April of last year, one member of the group was arrested for failing to comply with a court order, and during the arrest referred to his daughter as property. So that's probably one of the most infamous things about that group. It seems there is a trial right now against said member, so we'll have to see what happens and what will happen to The Body next. So those are all the cults, or again, as stated at the start, are groups accused of being cults. Again, not directly saying, I'm just saying that I have found other people saying that they are cults, or that they are cults, or they are cult-like. I'm guessing there's also probably some other groups that I probably missed that operate, within Washington State, but they're just either too small, information about them is not really found a lot on the internet, or just for some other reason I missed them. I do think it is really interesting that pretty much every group I found is on the west side of the state. I think there's a couple of interesting explanations, or possible explanations. First off, Eastern Washington has a smaller population and is more rural, so information isn't readily available as the densely populated Greater Seattle area, where it may be easier for cult members to recruit from. Since Western Washington is more urban and more internationally diverse, cults based from outside the state may find more reason to set up on the west side where they can recruit more followers. Also, Eastern Washington is seen as more conservative and religious, so it's more likely that people in that area of the state will already be in tight-knit religious groups, or just a religious group in general, so less likely to fall victim to New Age cult groups. But yeah, I think that's going to be it. Kind of a short episode. But wanted this to be kind of low effort. I didn't want it to distract too much from any other projects I'm working on. But yeah, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. I'm going to release this on Halloween. So if you are watching this on Halloween, I hope you have a good Halloween. You have a very spooky Halloween. But yeah, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Take care. And that'll be it.